And there's never been a real coherent theory that explains the past, you know, the fish gods and the lost civilizations and the astonishing megalithic stonework that couldn't have been built with the tools of the time. I really feel that this narrow-minded, cultish way of thinking has trapped us. And
you know, Hancock, you've been arguing that there's been a lost civilization in the human story. But what sort of civilization do you think it was? Well, one of the things I think is it was a civilization that used psychedelics. I think it was a civilization that emerged from shamanism, but did not stay at the hunter-gatherer stage, but that took the essence of shamanism and integrated it into a very different kind of civilization.
So we're going to connect the dots from the ancient past to the present to figure out why the world is so bloody screwed up today, and why most of us, and especially the young people today, find this world utterly, completely incomprehensible. They do not resonate with anything, what's going on. Most of us are confused about what's going on in politics. We don't understand why things are just getting worse and worse and worse when the answers should be so bloody simple. And yet things are just getting more and more complicated. So clearly whatever is going on is going in the wrong direction. And that's why we have things like nostalgia, where we keep reminiscing about the good old days. Isn't that just that alone is a reminder that things used to be better in the past, because they're certainly not getting better into the future. So the concept of nostalgia is a reminder that we should wake up.
An asteroid at least a kilometer wide hit the Earth around 12,900 years ago. Ow. But evidence of this impact remained elusive until 2018, when geologists discovered a crater buried under Greenland's Hiawatha Glacier. Early data show that it could be associated with the Younger Dryas. And in addition to the crater itself, researchers have found chemical signatures of an impact all over the world.
So those dates are very interesting. 11,600 years ago, you may recall from our last interview, is the date given by Plato for the subsidence of Atlantis. 11,000. I mean, he says that Atlantis subsided. Anybody can read this if they want to pick up Timaeus and Critias, the two dialogues that he describes Atlantis in. He gives that date, 9,000 years before this exile of Solon in Egypt, which took place in 600 BC, roughly. So 600 BC in roughly is 2,600 years ago. Add that to the 9,000 years and there's your 11,600. So now what has happened is 2,500 years ago, Plato gave a date, which would seem to suggest that something immense happened in the Atlantic Ocean, and you had an island complex that sank.
1,800 years ago, Earth was struck by a disintegrating comet, setting off global firestorms. Planet religious documents, Sumerian texts, the great chroniclers like Herodotus, Plato, and Berosus, a lot of what they say lines up with what Casey said in a trance-like state as he combed through the Universal Library. Atlantis went through several disasters that Casey talked about. These beings who lived on Atlantis took on many sizes of stature, from the midget to the giants, for there were giants in the earth in those days, men as tall as what would be termed today 10 or 12 feet in stature and well proportioned throughout. In one of his readings he says, those in Yucatan, those in the adjoining lands as begun by Iltar gradually lost their activities and came to be that people termed in other portions of America as the mound builders. Mound builders are this group of native tribes that built structures all around the eastern United States. In Alabama and Florida, the entity's sojourns then were with those of a race of unusual height, unusual proportions to what may be termed in the present, for they were the lords of the land. Accounts that we've uncovered about, unusually large native people who lived in the regions of Alabama and Georgia and Florida. Here's an account here, must have been 9 feet tall, And here's Tuscaloosa, the giant native chief. Him and his father were both reported by chroniclers to be well over 7 foot tall.
We've all seen this. Many of us would have seen this image on the internet or Wikipedia. We get told about the rabbinical tradition, about the Anakim that are of the same titanic races as the Rephaim, the Nephilim, the Gibborim, the Zamzumim, and the Emim. They talk about them like they were the Russians, the Jews, the Russians, the Polish, the Portuguese, and the Italians, right? And like Africa, we have the Boskop skull that's about 20% larger than the human skull. And seeing footprints like this that has become far more interesting. The giant footprint close to my house, about 2 hours drive from where I live, of that giant in Ecuador is actually in the Ecuador Museum. It's on display for everyone to see. And then there's still people that talk about, oh, giants are just a myth, they don't really exist. And there are these giant skeletons for us to see all of.
And that these people had gone on to influence the indigenous folk of the region and had kick-started civilization. Okay, so pre-pottery Neolithic culture of that region, and I cite other sites in the book as places where some of the firsts of humanity actually took place, and this was used as evidence, to show that this area was the cradle of civilization. That the shape of it could have been deliberately chosen to enhance the acoustics. Actually, tentatively suggested that there is some kind of acoustic element to Karahan Tepe, just as they have also suggested that it was at Göbekli Tepe. Now,
Weren't dwellings or houses, so what were the ruins for? That have not seen this yet, to remind you what sound manifests, how sound manifests physical form. Every sound frequency has its very own specific shape. What you're looking at here is just a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional effect. So this is actually happening in 3D, moving away, creating these beautiful shapes and patterns. Prime resonance frequency, that's what it's all about. Always beautiful. So, what the stone circles are just cymatic patterns representing the shape of the sound coming out of the ground at that specific place. That's it. So what these ancients knew of gigahertz, sound frequencies coming out of the walls, and electromagnetic fields coming out of the walls, from 400 megahertz all the way up to 1800 megahertz at Adam's calendar. It is quite spectacular. Adam's calendar is a mystery, because the stone circles we can figure out, and we can understand how they amplify the sound frequencies because of the stones and the walls and the quartz. So it's the quartz in the rocks, in the stones, in the walls that do the vibration and the amplification. And the sound moves, and the moving sound then creates magnetic fields, and the moving magnetic fields create the electromagnetic fields. So me that most ancient sites are actually energy generating devices, and they're made of stones, and especially the stone circles are made of stones that ring like bells. These giant bells with these antennae going up into the sky, and it's always antenna going up into the sky. And it seems that it was human sound that actually held up this weird energy grid, or that was used to activate these sound is the ultimate source of free energy. Nikola Tesla knew this, and I believe that this is how he constructed his energy device.
Saying that Tesla was an exceptional genius whose work is behind many important inventions. The story of energy might be quite mysterious. Tesla was a scientist, but some people say that he was mystical. They claim he believed the Egyptian Great Pyramids were key to limitless energy, an energy that could be distributed to everyone in the world for free. He was a controversial personality even after his death. They say that after he died alone in his hotel room in New York, the FBI confiscated all his belongings, taking all his documents.
Yes, sir, I understand classified. We'll keep it all classified.
Something doesn't feel right.
Cameraman, the military tribunal nears the end of its dramatic session.
The United States Navy's most recent and complex invention.
And why are we still on oil? I think we're on oil because, and coal and nuclear power, because there has been an active longitudinal long-term suppression of really advanced sciences and technologies. There are 5,135 patents that have been seized under the National Security Act. And I think that this has created both a geopolitical emergency and a geophysical emergency. Whether you believe in global warming or not, you cannot have 7 billion people burning oil and gas and coal indefinitely. Whereas there are advanced technologies dealing with the physics of zero energy, so that every home and car would have a generator pulling energy out of the fabric of space-time, and you would never have to burn a drop of oil. So, because there has been active suppression of this information, as Mr. Chin reported, there are people like he who have been threatened. There is a man working on one of these devices for my group.
Folks, it has happened again. The U.S. military shooting down another high-flying object. This time...
Bullshit, man!
Balloons, but this is the 4th takedown in just 8 days. And
John, does the U.S. government have video or imagery of these latest intercepts, and will you guys be releasing it?
You'd have to talk to DOD about that, Jackie. I don't know what...
American dominance in space. So important. Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the 6th branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement.
Say what?
Special Officer Dookie reporting.